Hi guys, so we're here with a new video, and this video will be my 3v3 melee PvP tier list video for season 1 of Dragonflight. And I've made a prediction video a few weeks ago whenever were in pre-season, and now we are actually a few weeks in, and I want to actually give out the opinion about the meta. So again, a tier list video is pretty much an opinion. I will try to be very objective, but of course my experience is going to play into the tier list. So if I have a very bad time versus, let's say, a demon hunter, I might make it a lot higher than maybe someone that plays demon hunter, right? So, but I think we are going to try to do it as objective as possible, and I will try to make everyone understand why I've put X, Y, Z into a specific tier. So there will be timestamps. I'm going to explain every single placement and try to articulate my thought towards you guys. So that's not only like I'm going to place it and that's it, I'm going to explain it as well, so you can also understand and maybe learn a few things or two. But again, it's my opinion. I'm going to make a ranged video, a healer video for 3v3, and then I'm going to take probably a week break from tier lists and try to do a 2v2 tier list, and then an RBG tier list whenever I have like a lot more games of RBGs under my belt. Anyways, it is 3v3, it is not solo shuffle, and we are going to start with the warrior class. So you'll have timestamps with warrior, rogue, whatever, and the specs will be, of course, discussed in those timestamps. But I want to make it easier for me, so if I put warrior, it will be for fury and arms. Whatever. Let's start for warrior. I think it's not a surprise that I'm a warrior main. For now, I'm playing a lot of arms. Like, I would say I'm maining arms probably 80% of the time. I play like 5 classes right now, and I play arms warrior most of the time in trees and in solo shuffle. And god damn it, my solo shuffle popped up. Anyways, I'm going to ignore it. And arms warrior is surprisingly good. I will say that it has difficulties versus casters, and we are in a meta where casters are not really hiding anymore in trees. I feel like caster cleaves, spell cleaves and such are just so prominent, and most of the time I'm playing like either warlock mage or warlock elemental shaman or warlock shadow priest, and it becomes very hard for me as an arms warrior to actually exist in those games, especially if I'm playing with the wrong class in trees. Whenever I'm saying wrong class, I would say like I'm playing with a Retri Paladin, for example, or I'm playing with a monk, or I'm playing with, let's say, a feral druid, something that is not really very good versus casters. If you play with a DK, for example, like TSG, or if you play with a Demon Hunter, or you play with a Shadow Priest, which gives you the utility in the defensives and actually the easiness to actually survive and to actually perform, or you play with an Elemental Shaman or whatever, you can actually perform as an arms warrior. And that's why I'm very torn, because I want to put it in meta, but I'm going to prefaces. For me, it's an A tier spec. So it means meta. A tier means meta, S tier means god tier, and B tier means good. I think arms is a bit better than good. And you might say it has no defensives, but you should understand that in trees, you choose your own allies. If you're playing, let's say, with a Disc Priest and a Retribution Paladin in trees, well, you're kind of asking to get wrecked, right? But if you play with a Resto Druid and you play with a DK, for example, so basically TSG, you're going to be very good, because they are going to probably go for you anyways, but the Resto Druid can keep you up even without the defensives. You can also just temporize with your DK, because the DK will slow everyone. You can just run away, you can also pillar hump, and then go back in versus the casters. So I feel like, all in all, if you take all the factors with the fact that you can choose your own allies, I think arms warriors are very strong. They have so much damage, they have so much easiness at disrupting the enemy team, that it is actually a very good spec. You will say that the defensives are not that great, but that's the only talking point about arms, that it can actually die. But I think with Blizzard's actual balancing changes, actually making every spec being targetable and being killable, I think Arms Warriors are going to be on top. Because if everyone is going to be a glass cannon, I think Arms Warrior is going to be the best glass cannon there is. But anyways, for now it's A tier, and I'm going to talk about Fury directly. I think Fury is also A tier, and for the same reasons, they are good versus specific comps. I would say that Fury Warriors are one of the best versus casters, because again, you have better uptime, you have Blood Fury to actually get out of roots and snares. You have some good damage, you have insane burst, and whenever you can hit and actually connect, you're going to actually do a lot of damage, also a lot of self-sustain. If you're talking about the survivability of Arms Warrior, you're going to talk about the survivability of Fury being better. And that is a factor, so it means you can play more greedy comps, I would say, to actually perform. So I would say Fury Warrior with a Demon Hunter is actually quite popular. You can also make it work with a Feral Druid basically being Kitty Cleave. But the problem is with a few comps that they are actually dying, and you should notice that if you're playing versus melees that have actually disarm, and you're doing enraged regeneration, you get disarmed on that, you basically have no value on that ability. While, for example, Die by the Sword is really strong versus melees. It is a bit less versus casters. It is also not castable whenever you're stunned, but I feel like both are good in their own way, especially in threes. Now let's talk about the rogue spec, and I am going to make people a bit mad, but I think Assassination Rogue is still S tier, even after the nerfs. It still can kill people. You can play a dampening spec, which basically has wound poison, and you can play with a Shadow Priest, and you can win over time. Or you can play with the King's Bane and probably kill someone in a go. It has a 1-minute CD, so you can actually just do a go every time they don't have a trinket. So I think Assassination Rogue is one of the best melees, especially in trees. You can just choose your own allies. You can play with a Fire Mage now or an Arcane Mage in an RMP, still going to be very good. Or you can play with a Shadow Priest and you're going to stomp games because you have some sheer power with those two specs. I think all in all, Assassination is a great pick if you want to main it, if you want to play it. I would say I think the design by itself is going to be very good. They can nerf it 10,000 times, it's still going to be good, except if the numbers are not right. But for now, even with the nerfs, I think the numbers are still right. It is dying though, so if I have to give a proper rating, I think I'm going to put it in A+, because now I'm trying to reason. I think the damage is probably S tier. The defenses though are not that great. If you're talking about defenses about Arms Warrior, why not talk about the Assassination Rogue, because it's quite the same really. And I think Assassination Rogue is going to deserve the A+. It is definitely not bad. It means that it is really on the verge of God tier, but also on the verge of meta. If it gets nerfed all the time, at one point will be meta or even just in the good sector, which is B. But we will see. We will see. I think people that are playing Assassination Rogue, they know that it's strong, and they could still gaslight you about how rogues are not good and they need buffs and whatever. But all in all, we all know that rogues are good at their very moment. And you could even say about outlaw rogues. I think outlaw rogues, I'm going to put it in a good state, but that might be because I don't see outlaw rogues, so I'm not going to put it elsewhere. So the B tier is either good or I just don't know, because I think outlaw rogues are good, but Assassination Rogues and Subtlety is just a bit more fun for rogues to play. That's probably the main reason. While, for example, Arms Warrior, even though people considered it being bad compared to Fury, Arms Warrior were still seeing in Solo Shuffle or in 3s or in 2s or whatever game mode that you're playing, because it is a popular fan favorite spec. But Outlaw Rogues, they are not really that popular. If you're playing a rogue, often you want to play Assassination or Subtlety, and that's the reason why it is not played. Now, is it not played because it's not strong? I don't think so. I think the few Outlaw Rogues I saw, they were actually very good. They were a bit one tricky though. They knew what they were doing, so obviously they are a specialist at their spec. So I'm not considering an Assassination Rogue going to go into Outlaw and going with a lot of success. So that's why I'm going to be in the B spot. But that's not a bad tier, by the way. It could be meta. It is just I don't see any outlaws. That's the main problem I have with that spec, and that's why for me it deserves the B spot. Now, Enhancement Shaman. They got nerfs on the one-shots a lot, so they got nerfs on Elemental Blast. It still hits. I mean, it's 15%, and if you're critting already 200k, 15% of that, I would say it's still going to be around 175, 180, something like that. So I don't think it's going to be very noticeable. But the one thing that is going to be noticeable is the primordial wave into double lightning bolt go. That's going to be very noticeable. I think that is not going to one shot anymore, at least. It is not going to be very surprising anymore, and they will have to try to find another way, another build to actually perform. I did play a little bit of Enhancement Shaman. To be honest, I like it, but also don't. I think the comp diversity is just too limited for me to actually enjoy the gameplay. And I think it just needs a whole rework again. I think Enhancement Shaman, they were better in previous expansions. I'm not going to say Legion or BFA, but I think really Walls of Draenor, it was quite fun. In Cataclysm it was also quite fun. In Mob it was also quite fun. But I would say power-wise, it is definitely a B tier. It still is strong. I think it's too gimmicky though. It could deserve A tier if it's not really gimmicky or not too much around CDs. You can play Ascendance basically the same way you played before in Shadowlands. But it is a 3-minute CD. I don't know if you're going to rely on a win every 3 minutes. I think it's too long with the current state of healing. If you can survive 3 minutes after that go, then probably you're going to win. But now games are not lasting that long. In trees, it can happen if you have good coordination and the enemy team too. But for me, it just deserves the B tier because of the lack of diversity of comps, and even that comp is just a bit too squishy in my opinion. Feral Druid. Feral Druid is for me a S tier spec, and anyone can say that, oh, look at the stats, there is not a lot of ladder representation, how can it be an S tier? It should be A tier or B tier. That's not true, man. Ladder representation is not everything. Feral Druid is just one of the most difficult specs to play. Not everyone wants to play a difficult spec. Not everyone wants to play with 10,000 keybinds. And that's why Demon Hunters are so popular. It is not because of the design, it is because of the sheer fun you can have with just little knowledge. With Feral Druid, if you don't have a lot of knowledge, you're going to feel super squishy, you're going to die directly, you're not even going to have a great rotation, and I, for once, know that if I'm going to play Feral Druid, I'm not going to have a lot of fun or a lot of success. I might train on it if I play it like one trick, but I play 5 classes, so I don't feel like I'm going to add a 6th class, which is super difficult to play. But I think everyone is going to think like that. I think the people are you looking at the ladder, they are specialists. They are actual specialists that are playing the Feral Druid class, and whenever you play versus them, it does feel OP. And am I saying that it deserves a nerf? I don't know. It might be a nerf on the survivability, or maybe the changes in 10.0.5 will change like the dynamic, because it does a lot of AoE damage. You don't even know who you are going to heal because they're spreading everything. But Feral Druid, all in all, it's a very good class. I think people are just underestimated so hard. I don't understand how you could put Feral in A tier with other specs that have a lot more difficulties. And we're not even talking about a god tier comp. We are talking about a god tier spec. Now, if you want to talk about jungle, let's talk about jungle. Jungle cleave is insane, and the one people that are actually telling me that it is not insane, I don't know, man. If you have just communication with your Hansa and with your priest, it is quite enough to actually win games just by CC alone. But sometimes they are zigzagging you because they have enough damage to do that. They don't even need to change CC anymore. But even if they do, God tier, like the comp itself, Jungle Cleave, is insane. So for me, S tier, no debate. People that want to debate me about Feral Druid, please let me know in the comment section below. explain me why it is not S tier, and we can then talk a bit further about that. Now I forgot about Stability Rogue. I'm going to put Stability Rogue into A+ as well. It has the best comps, I would say, to actually perform not only on spec basis, but only just because of the comp. It is RMP, but the spec itself is still very strong. It can kill you in a shadowy duel, it can kill you in a kidney stun. You can actually see a lot of healers by themselves very easily. They can again control the game, and I think it's very hard to actually put it like D tier, C tier, B tier, because even if the damage is not good, the control and the CC and the play style that you can play as a Stability Rogue doesn't really need damage on the meters. You are going to say, but Stability Rogue, they don't have a lot of meter damage, like my Demon Hunter does quadruple the damage of a Stability Rogue. Look, it's not only that. It's not about the damage of Stability Rogue. Of course, the damage is still very high. It can one-shot people. Let's be clear, it still can do a lot of damage, but you should understand that Stability Rogue, the whole kit just makes it very strong. And even if the numbers are not correct, I think Stability are still going to be very strong. So for now, the numbers are good. So it means that the class itself is going to be A+. If you're going to play, if you're going to talk about RMP, I might as well just put it in S tier. But for now, if you're talking about just the spec basis, and let's say that they can play other comps, I think A+ is going to be good. I think it's going to be a good tier for them. I think they are superior to warriors, just because they can escape death multiple times. They can reset very easily if they have a great comp to go for, and in general, I think it's a great spec to play. Now let's talk about the case. Now, I want to preface something. I know that I've made a video about a patch note where I said, don't worry guys, you're still going to be very strong, you're going to over-exaggerate a bit, that's fine. Now, was that an exaggeration? It is. They have nerfed the self-healing, the self-sustain, the AMS. But are they still strong? Yes. And for me, it is still A+. Unholy DK is still A+. I'm not going to put it in S tier because you're right, they can die. And the A+ tier is pretty much they can die. But versus casters, you're still God tier. Versus a few specs that really isn't great versus Unholy DKs, like for example Retri Paladins, Enhancement Shaman, well, you're still good. Versus warriors, yeah, you're going to die. Versus demon hunters, that's alright, you can do it. Versus hunters, you might die because they can one-shot you somehow, some way. But of course the self-healing is nerfed, but that's not a problem. You need to understand that self-healing and self-sustain and defensives is not everything in trees. We're not talking about soul shuffle where you have to play 1 versus 5. Right now you're playing 3v3 with your comp, you can choose your own comp, you can choose your own healer, and by that mean it is actually possible for you to survive damage. Of course, Death Strike spamming is not the option anymore, but the damage, the kill potential, the CC that you can produce is enough to actually win games. And I think Unholy DK, they are still very strong, and people can say, but I feel so weak, I cannot survive damage, like there's a Fury Warrior on me and I cannot spam Death Strike and survive. Yeah, I mean, mate, every spec should die, except maybe healers. I feel like healers, some healers would need a bit of a buff, like survivability wise, like for example Astra Shift being able to be usable in a stun. But Unholy DKs, they don't have that problem. They have sustain, they have defensives, they need to just rotate those defensives. Versus casters, basically you can play spell warding and you're good. Versus melees, of course you're going to die, but you can choose a mate to actually help you with that. You can also play like a mixed like comp with a Demonology Warlock or with a Shadow Priest, and if they're going for you, they're going to get blasted. But if they are going for them, where is the problem about survivability now? You're not going to die, right? The Shadow Priest or the Demonology Warlock will die. So you're here with your damage and you're going to kill people because you have insane control, insane silence, insane stun, insane blind. And I feel like people are just in a loophole of I need defensives, I need self-healing, self-sustain. But in trees, you can choose your own allies. I think in solo shuffle, you might be right. You might be right that in solo shuffle it needs a bit more survivability because the dampening is already 30%. Because it ramps fast, and after you one shot, you're pretty much like at their mercy. But in trees, it's not the same. The gameplay is not the same, and you should also understand that Unholy Decay is still very close to God tier, very close to meta, and for me, it deserves the spot in between God tier and meta. Now, Frost Decay, I want to put it in B tier, but I want to put it in A tier. I think the few Frost Decays I saw, they were very good, but I don't know if it's because of the player or the comp or the spec. It has good damage, but it is sustainable because of one reason: they don't have an MS effect. So if you're not playing a comp with an MS effect, like let's say you're playing with a Retribution Paladin or an Enhancement Shaman or whatever comp you can play, it is not going to be very great. But I'm assuming that you choose your DPS and your healer correctly, so I'm going to put it in A tier. If you have seen Frost Decay with a Windwalker, you might have died in the first seconds of that match because it's so bursty. They can actually do insane damage. They have great control. They have actually 3 stuns if they want to. Often they just play with 2 stuns with Asphyxiate and the AoE PvP talent stun. I don't even know the name anymore. I always forget. But they can also play the Frostworm stun. Normally they should not play that because it's not as good as before. But I think all in all, it is a great spec. It is just lacking on the fact that it is not named Unholy. I think the problem with Frost Decay is you still have Unholy being that much better, that much easier to play too, that much paddy, because again, you have a lot of pad damage as Unholy Decay, so on the meters you see that you're going to do a lot of damage. And Frost Decay, they are a bit more squishy because Necrotic Wounds, they healed Unholy Decay, so they still have self-sustain. But Frost Decay, they have, I would say, the same tankiness of an Arms Warrior, which is basically none, except versus casters. So I think, again, with the prominence of the number of casters I see on the ladder, I think Frost Decay is still very meta. But of course, if they have like a drought of heals, I would say that they're like casters, and casters are not queuing anymore, I would put it in B tier. But it is much more better than in Shadowlands, and people should also notice that Frost Decay, it is purely because of the gameplay or because of Unholy being that much better that it is actually not that played in on the ladder. It is not like an Arms Warrior, which is a fan favorite spec. Frost Decay, it wasn't really ever a fan favorite spec. I think Unholy Decays were more happy with Unholy Decays being good than with Frost Decay being good. Whenever they were forced into Frost Decay, often than not, they were re-rolling to another character because they don't like the gameplay with Obliterate, Frost Strike, Rhyme procs. Some people don't like it. So that's maybe why you don't see a lot of ladder representation, but often the ones that you're going to see, they're going to be very deadly. Now let's talk about the infamous Demon Hunter. I need to hydrate myself because I'm going to spit some facts. Demon Hunter Havoc is S tier. It doesn't even matter how hard they are going to nerf it. It is still so strong. It is not only the damage, really. It is everything. Blur is still very strong. I wish I had Blur like a Demon Hunter as an Arms Warrior. I think nobody would like talk my defensives down anymore. They have insane mobility. Even if they don't want to fight, they can just run away and then come back whenever they have the CDs, for example. Often than not, they can just cleave you. They have every button basically does AoE damage except Chaos Strike. And yeah, the hand. Well, I think the hand also does AoE damage, like dot damage. But anyways, it's very strong. Like I think people still don't understand that they can nerf the damage however they want. But it's not only that; it's the CDs, the actual CD on Rush, the actual CDs on Vengeful Retreat, the CDs on Blade Dance, the CDs on everything really. And I think for now they nerfed the sustain. It's going to be better. Like now it's killable. It's not annoying to 1v1 a Demon Hunter anymore. But I think it's very deadly. It has a lot of CC. It has actually darkness, which is you're going to think it's not a great CD because you can still get hit through darkness. But if you're doing it at 100% and your mate is inside, they're going to be unkillable most of the time. They can of course get pushed out with Elemental Shaman, for example, or Shaman in general, or they can be a Ring of Beast or whatever. But I think as a whole, they are still very S tier out of all the melee spec. Now, I don't know if in solo shuffle, for me, it's still S tier in solo shuffle because of the you need to just see the top 100 of people that are playing solo shuffle, and now it's a counter argument of feral druids. Demon Hunter is one of the most popular specs because the playstyle is fun, probably the keybinds. It's not very like heavy. You can play whatever you want and it will be good. You have also now new talents, which is fresh because in Shadowlands and since Legion you had like a few talents to choose. Now you have a lot of talents to choose, and it's more fun to actually play around it, I guess, because it's new for them. But I think as a whole, it is going to be overplayed because of the fact that it is very strong. If it was a bit more weak, people would still play it, but it would not be in that exaggeration of a meta. Like every game or two, you're going to play versus a Demon Hunter. In solo shuffle, if you're not facing a Demon Hunter, you are a bit lucky, right? So for me, it is a S tier spec. I don't have arguments against that. I try to find myself like, look, maybe it's Demon Hunter A plus or A tier spec. I don't even know, but not even that. As an Arms Warrior, I win versus Demon Hunters like in a 1v1 situation or like a 3v3 situation whenever I'm going for them. They can die, that's not the problem. The problem is my healer cannot sustain it. My caster cannot cast anything. They have damage reduction baseline for magic. That's baseline. I wish I had that on my Arms Warrior. I wish I had that on my Fury. If you're going to say Death Stance, I'm going to slap you. But anyways, don't say Death Stance, please. That's not a defensive anymore. It's not even worth to use it. If you're using it, you are basically losing the actual pressure you can do, and then the enemy team can pressure you even more, so you're like on the back foot. And whenever you are on the back foot, it is like an assassination rogue that blinds the DPS because they are going to kill them. That's basically a lost game. You're not using your blind to effectively win the game. You're using blinds to peel yourself. So you already have a CC less to actually win the game. Anyways, that's a bit the same analogy with Death Stance. I feel like Death Stance is not that great. And Demon Hunters, like Havoc Demon Hunters, are very, very good. Just sustaining versus casters, versus the melees, they are very good because of Blur. I mean, they have a lot of tools, and that deserves by itself an S tier spot, but the damage is also very good. So I don't know how they can nerf it to bring it back in line with the A tiers or the A plus, but yeah, I think for now that they are going to eat nerfs after nerf every patch. I think it's bound to happen. At one point, it will be C tier, and yeah, it's all right. I mean, it is continuous changing, and if it's going to be C tier, at one point it will be back at S tier. But I think they will have to hard nerf it if they want to change it. And whenever it does, I think it's going to be dead by the same definition. So I have difficulties to actually fill C tier and D tier because I'm going to spoil you guys. Those three last specs are not going to be C or D tier. But basically, we have the Retribution Paladin. Retribution Paladin for me is in threes. In solo shuffle, I think it's a bit better because I do play it. In threes, since you play a lot versus casters and you're playing versus, I would say, annoying comps that you really can't do anything versus. I want to put it in A tier, but it's very, very difficult. I'm going to give some separation, man. I'm going to give some separation, and I know it's a bit ridiculous now, but let me explain. For me, Retribution Paladins deserve a B+, and I'm going to explain why. It's a bit better than just good. It is definitely meta at one point of the game, like some points of the game. They do insane amount of damage. They do actually insane amount of damage. That's the thing about Retribution Paladin. They do one shot, one tap damage. And if you don't have damage reduction at that point, you're going to get one shot. It doesn't matter how, doesn't matter who, and doesn't matter what's actually going on, you're bound to die. And that's pretty much the Retribution Paladin. It is very good. And I think you can give an argument to also put it in a meta, but I'm going to give you a counter argument. Casters. If your caster is versus you and they're actually like locking you and you're getting rooted, slowed, a freedom doesn't do anything at that point. You get stunned, then you get feared, and then you have no freedom anymore. You get rooted. Your charger doesn't do anything because again, you can get slowed. So the mobility that you have presumably is not going to help. So I think Retribution Paladin is like in an iffy situation where they need to play with specific specs to actually manage to play around their weakness. But if you're playing versus like a double caster, like for let's say a warlock and an elemental shaman, or a warlock and a shadow priest, you're going to have a hard time, especially versus priest with a fast mastery spell. Your bubble doesn't do like a lot. That's not defensive anymore. So for me, it's B plus because depending on the comps you're playing, depending on the situations, you're going to win games in like the first few seconds. But since in trees you can choose your allies and you can also choose which comps you're playing, people play shadow play. People play caster cleaves. People play lock shaman, and that becomes very hard for you to actually exist in those games. So for me, it's going to be a B plus spec. Survival hunter. Well, I'm going to put it in A tier. I think it's very strong. People just don't know much about it. They don't know how to play around it. And they have maybe difficulty surviving versus a survival hunter. And the same for the survival hunter itself. They don't know how to play without craving stratagem. Well, for example, if you're watching Peak Max, he makes it look like an S tier spec. But the problem is, people are now so in habit with the legendary from Shadowlands, the Craven Stratagem, basically dispelling everything on you, that now they don't know how to play around it. And I think it's more adjustment than it's anything else. And I think it's still a meta spec because it has a damage, it has the CC, it has the stunts, it has everything. And I think just because of that, you're going to have a great time. And there is a rogue ganking me. I'm going to try to survive, but I'm going to let go, I think. Never mind, I'm going to let it go. But anyways, Survival Hunter, very strong. I would recommend to play it if you're a hunter. I think it's the most safe spec to actually main. It is not going to eat a nerf. I think MM is more likely to get a nerf, although it's not very strong. The damage is not fun to play against, I guess. But Survival Hunter is one of those specs that are going to be very strong throughout this season. And now we have Windwalker. I think Windwalker, it might be a surprise for you, but since they nerfed Strike of the Windlord, I think it is now just on par with Fury. I was on the fence of putting in A+, but since they nerfed the one-shots and the sustained damage is not that great, I think it is meta because you can still one-shot people, but outside of that, you're not doing a lot. And I think people just don't know how to play against or play with a Windwalker, but if you are experienced and you know how to kite and you know how to get away and you know what to do, you really are safe from dying, right? You are super mobile. You can die though, but if you can play the long game and you can just try to sustain yourself until you have your go, then you win the game probably into a big leg sweep, and your healer is actually CCing the other healer. So that's pretty much my explanation for Windwalkers being A tier. It has insane damage, insane burst. The consistent damage is not that high, but it becomes better and better though. They're nerfing the burst, but they're buffing the consistent damage. So I'm looking forward to the next patches and how they will like balance everything. But this is pretty much my tier list. And I must say, you might say, where are the C tiers? Where are the D tiers? But to be honest, I think melees are just very, very strong in this expansion. I don't feel like someone is C tier or D tier, so I need to delete those rows so you can actually see what my tier list is. I think most people might think that I'm overrating Arms Warrior, but I think you should watch and play versus Arms Warriors in trees to actually understand what I'm telling you. I think it is going to be very meta soon. Mark my words, next patch 10.0.5 Arms Warriors will be S tier, and I think you're not ready for that because you are underestimating it. You think that being a glass cannon is not possible in World of Warcraft. I'm going to give you an argument with Windwalkers. I think Windwalkers are still very strong. But anyways, this is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that yet. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you want PvP content. Like the video if you like the video. Comment below what you think about the tier list. And we will catch each other very soon in a next video. Have a great day. Bye.
No, I don't take shit, I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. Everything I do so instinctive and so passionate. Every word I move so descriptive like an adjective. I got a vendetta against people who patented being negative when you should be getting after it.